Boss, these are terrible circumstances to have to meet you under. I'm sorry to have to do this, but I greatly appreciate you taking some time out of your and speaking with us. Let me just get some booking stuff out of the way. Is it Frank? That's your legal name?
Legal name is Franklin.
Franklin? You go by Frank, though?
Yes.
And how do you spell your last name, sir?
Rzucek.
I knew I wouldn't get that one right. What's the date of birth for you? And best phone number to get up? Okay. So I'll just start off with anything that you think you want or needed to tell us. Someone said maybe earlier that you had some information you want to pass on or something. No?
About?
I don't know. And there might have been miscommunication, but I thought somebody said you had something that you wanted to pass on to us. Is that not right?
Okay. My mind's just...
No, I understand.
The text, that's all I was talking about earlier, but that was it.
Okay. And was that the Facebook request?
Yeah, they sent a request, and it just... Probably my wife hasn't called me screaming because I know she probably got one too.
Right. Okay. So what can you tell me about Shanann and Chris and their relationship?
He was a great father.
Okay.
I mean, I couldn't ask for a better father for him, for the kids. I mean, honestly, did everything for them. Played with them, bathed them. I couldn't ask for someone better.
Okay.
Husband-wise, same way. Never seen any kind of problems with him. I was out here prior to the 6 weeks she was here. I don't know the exact date before they both went on the vacation with her Thrive company.
Mm-hmm.
And watched the kids. There was a little bit of difference in him, but I just took it as being a father. I mean, he was getting a little sterner with the girls. I mean, it was nothing, he was always the quiet type with them.
Mm-hmm.
But he started getting a little sterner with them, and I just took it as being a father. Now he's getting a little bit tired of what they're doing, running them all over, so he's just getting stern with them. Never hit him that I know of. It's hard. There's different things that was going on. I mean, he did change his, they were going through this new Thrive stuff she was selling, and he started getting himself all built up and lost a lot of weight. But he was always a body type person, always took care of his body and all that. So they did come out. Janet came out for 6 weeks with the girls. They were going back and forth from our house to his house, his mother's house.
Okay.
And the little Celeste had allergies to nuts,
Mm-hmm.
tree nuts, very allergic to them. She had 2 EpiPens she had to carry with her. So she told us all, get rid of anything that's got nuts or any, just get it up high enough. Don't gotta throw it away, just get it out, no problem. My wife cleaned the whole house out. I mean, I had to go looking for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She took underneath every cabinet. So she told Chris's parents the same thing.
For years, Chris Watts has sat behind prison walls, officially silent, officially finished. His case, one of the most disturbing family murders in modern true crime history, seemed closed. No trial drama left, no appeals pending, no new confessions on record. But in 2025, that illusion shattered. Prison letters, never meant for the public, began to surface. And what they revealed was not remorse, but something far more unsettling. According to multiple sources, these letters were written over several years to different recipients, supporters, religious figures, and individuals Chris trusted enough to speak freely. In them, he revisits the crime again and again, not as a man seeking forgiveness, but as someone still trying to control the narrative. The words are calculated, carefully chosen, and deeply disturbing in their tone. What immediately stood out to investigators and analysts was how often Chris contradicted his own previous confessions, In some letters, he subtly minimized his responsibility. In others, he shifted emotional blame without directly denying guilt. It wasn't a full retraction, but it wasn't honesty either. It was manipulation through ink and paper. Even more chilling was what he didn't say. The letters avoided the victims' names more than expected. When they were mentioned, the language felt distant, almost clinical. For families who have lived with the consequences of his actions, this emotional detachment raised serious questions. Was Chris Watts ever truly remorseful, or was remorse simply another mask? By 2025, experts reviewing the letters began to agree on one thing. These writings weren't meant to confess. They were meant to influence, to test public reaction, to quietly reshape how history remembers him. And this was only the beginning. Because as more letters surfaced, a darker pattern began to form, one that suggested Chris Watts was still hiding something he never wanted the world to find. If you want the full breakdown of these leaked letters and what they really reveal, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. As investigators and analysts continued examining the leaked prison letters, a troubling pattern began to emerge. Chris Watts may have lost his freedom, but the need to control how others saw him clearly survived incarceration. Chapter by chapter, letter by letter, the same themes surfaced: self-pity, subtle deflection, and a quiet insistence that the public still didn't understand him. In several letters, Chris described prison life in detail, but not in the way most people would expect. Instead of focusing on punishment or accountability, he framed himself as someone enduring an unfair burden. He wrote about loneliness, faith, and how misunderstood he felt, often positioning himself as a man paying endlessly for one night. That phrase alone raised alarms. To experts, it suggested minimization, a psychological tactic used to shrink the gravity of one's actions without openly denying them. What made these letters especially disturbing was how carefully Chris avoided direct emotional responsibility. He used passive language, rarely stating what he did, instead referring to what happened. This distancing wasn't accidental. Behavioral analysts noted that it mirrored the way he spoke during early police interviews: calm, controlled, and emotionally hollow. Even more unsettling were the moments where Chris appeared to seek sympathy from the reader. He spoke of spiritual growth and claimed he had changed, yet offered no clear acknowledgement of the lifelong pain left behind. To critics, this wasn't growth, it was performance, a rewritten version of himself, crafted to soften judgment and possibly influence future perception. By 2025, many began to believe these letters weren't written for healing or truth. They were written as a slow, quiet campaign. A way for Chris Watts to remain relevant, to feel powerful, and to test whether he could still sway opinions from a prison cell. And if that was the case, the question became unavoidable. What else was he still trying to control? If you're following this story and want the next chapter as soon as it drops, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. By the time the prison letters surfaced publicly, many wondered how far Chris Watts had gone to keep them hidden. These weren't casual notes dashed off in moments of boredom. According to sources close to the investigation, some letters were carefully worded, rewritten, and sent only to people Chris believed he could trust. That alone raised suspicions. What was he afraid of the world seeing? In these letters, Chris attempted to reshape the narrative of his life before the murders. He painted himself as a man overwhelmed by expectations, trapped in a role he never wanted, but felt forced to play. Marriage, fatherhood and responsibility were described not with love, but with language that suggested pressure and suffocation. To readers, it felt less like reflection and more like quiet justification. What stood out most was what Chris didn't say. The names of Shanann and the children were often absent or mentioned briefly, without emotional depth. There were no vivid memories of family life, no expressions of genuine grief. Instead, the focus always drifted back to him, his thoughts, his faith, his suffering. Experts noted this as a classic sign of narcissistic self-focus, even years after the crime. In one particularly chilling letter, Chris hinted that the truth was more complicated than people think, without explaining further. That single line fueled endless speculation. Was he suggesting there were details never revealed? Or was it another attempt to cast doubt? To keep himself at the center of attention? By 2025, these leaked letters had become more than personal correspondence. They were evidence, not of innocence or remorse, but of a man still trying to control his story. Even behind bars, Chris Watts appeared unwilling to surrender the one thing he valued most: the narrative. As the letters continued, a new theme became impossible to ignore: faith. Chris Watts repeatedly referenced God, forgiveness, and spiritual rebirth, presenting himself as a man transformed behind prison walls. He wrote about prayer routines, Bible verses that comforted him, and the belief that his sins had already been forgiven by a higher power. To some readers, these passages sounded like redemption. To others, they felt rehearsed. What made these claims unsettling was the timing. These declarations of faith didn't appear immediately after the murders, but later, often coinciding with public backlash or renewed media attention. Critics questioned whether this spiritual language was genuine or simply another layer of self-protection. By framing himself as forgiven, Chris subtly shifted the focus away from accountability and toward personal salvation. In several letters, he suggested that people judged him without understanding his true heart. That phrase appeared more than once. He wrote as if the public's anger was unfair, as though outrage was an overreaction rather than a response to unimaginable loss. Once again, the emotional weight rested on how he felt, not on the devastation left behind. Psychologists who later reviewed excerpts from the letters noted a pattern: moral deflection. By emphasizing faith, Chris could avoid confronting the full reality of his actions. Forgiveness became a shield, not a conclusion. It allowed him to move forward internally without fully acknowledging the harm caused. For the families affected, and the public watching closely, these letters raised an uncomfortable question. Can someone truly repent if they never fully face the truth? Or was this another performance, carefully written in ink, meant to soften history? As analysts dug deeper into the leaked prison letters, one disturbing possibility began to surface: that Chris Watts was hinting at a truth he never fully wanted exposed. Not a dramatic confession, not a clear admission, but fragments. Carefully placed sentences, half-formed thoughts that suggested there was more beneath the surface than he had ever publicly admitted. In multiple letters, Chris referenced details that wouldn't help anyone to know, a phrase that immediately caught attention. To investigators and psychologists, this wasn't humility. It was avoidance. When someone claims the truth is too painful or unnecessary to share, it often signals fear of consequences, not concern for others. Even from prison, Chris appeared to be guarding something. What made this more unsettling was how often he framed himself as protecting people from pain. He implied that silence was an act of mercy, that reopening certain details would only cause harm. But critics argued the opposite. Withholding truth denied the victims' families the closure they had been promised, when he pled guilty. There were also subtle contradictions between these letters and earlier confessions. Timelines blurred, emotional triggers shifted. Certain moments were emphasized while others disappeared entirely. This selective memory reinforced a long-standing concern. Chris Watts never told the full story, only the version that benefited him at the time. By 2025, many experts agreed that if a secret existed, it wasn't necessarily a shocking new act, but a deeper understanding of motive, one that would strip away excuses, faith narratives, and self-pity, exposing the raw reality of who he was and why he acted. And that may be the truth he tried hardest to bury. If you want to keep uncovering what these letters reveal, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.